Elias Thorne wasn't your typical adventurer. While others in the system-integrated realm of Aevum were out slaying grotesque goblins for XP or deciphering ancient runes for powerful spells, Elias was poring over the Cosmic Concordat, a comprehensive guide to interdimensional law and regulatory procedures, revised edition. His weapon of choice wasn't a gleaming sword or a potent spellbook, but a meticulously organized satchel overflowing with legal briefs, writs of summons, and annotated copies of various arcane statutes. Elias's class, Litigator, was considered an oddity, a non-combat profession that somehow managed to thrive in a world teeming with magical beasts and power-hungry sorcerers. His stats were underwhelming. Strength, 3, Dexterity, 5, Constitution, 4, Intelligence, 28, Charisma, 22 mostly. Used for persuasive arguments, not charming monsters. His skills included expert legal interpretation, master of contractual law, objection, intermediate, cross-examination advanced, and his signature move, filing of injunction expert. His current client was a spectral wisp named Bartholomew, a minor poltergeist facing eviction from his ancestral and decidedly dilapidated haunted mansion by a particularly avaricious lesser demon lord named Grimgot. Grimgut's claim rested on a convoluted demonic property law dating back to the Third Infernal Dynasty, statutes so arcane that most demons simply shrugged and resorted to brute force. But Bartholomew, bless his ethereal heart, had heard of Elias Thorne, the only being in Aevum who could argue a demon into a legal standstill. Elias stood before Grimgot in his makeshift courtroom, a dimly lit cavern adorned with the skulls of various unfortunate litigants. Grimgot, a hulking brute with glowing red eyes and horns that could gore a minotaur, sat on a throne of bones, flanked by two equally menacing imp bailiffs. So, Grimgot growled, his voice like rocks grinding together. "You're this litigator I've heard about? You think your fancy words can sway the laws of the infernal realms?" Elias adjusted his spectacles, his gaze unwavering despite the palpable aura of menace. "With all due respect, Lord Grimgot, the laws of the infernal realms, like any legal framework, are subject to interpretation and, dare I say, proper application. My client Bartholomew has occupied this domicile for over 3 centuries, establishing clear precedent under Article 7, subsection B, of the aforementioned Third Infernal Dynasty Property Act." Grimgot scoffed. "That act was repealed by the decree of destitution during the reign of the Shadow Tyrant." "Ah, but with respect, your infernal majesty," Elias countered smoothly, producing a well-worn scroll from his satchel. The decree of destitution contained a crucial sunset clause, clearly stating its expiration upon the cessation of the Shadow Tyrant's reign, which, as historical records clearly indicate, tapped the scroll with a flourish, occurred precisely 147 years ago, as documented in the Chronicles of the Fallen Stars, Volume 69, page 312. Grimgut's brow furrowed. His imp bailiffs exchanged nervous glances. Demonic law, it turned out, was surprisingly bureaucratic and riddled with obscure loopholes. Furthermore, Elias continued, his voice gaining confidence, Lord Grimgut's claim relies on a contested title deed purportedly signed by Bartholomew's great-great-great-great-grand-poltergeist. However, forensic analysis of the spectral signature on the document, he produced another scroll, this one emitting a faint ethereal glow, reveals a clear temporal inconsistency, indicating the deed was likely forged using anachronistic thaumaturgical techniques. A violation of Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Infernal Forgery Statute. Grimgot slammed his fist on the bone throne, the cavern shaking. "Enough of your legal jargon, mortal. This is my territory, and I want this pathetic ghost out." "Objection, your infernal majesty," Elias declared, his voice surprisingly forceful. "Lord Grimgut's statement is based on unsubstantiated claims and fails to address the legal merits of the case. Furthermore, his outburst constitutes undue pressure on the court and intimidation of opposing counsel. A clear violation of Procedural Rule 12, subsection F, of the Infernal Courts of Justice Charter. Grimgott sputtered, his red eyes blazing. Rule 12? There's a Rule 12? Elias offered a polite, almost pitying smile. Indeed. It was enacted during the great legal reforms of the Seventh Circle, a period your lordship might recall. He paused pointedly. If one were more diligent in keeping abreast of legislative updates, the imps were now frantically flipping through massive, dusty tomes, their whispers echoing through the cavern. Grimgoot's face was a mask of bewildered fury. He was a demon lord who could command legions of the undead, but he was utterly outmatched by the arcane power of legal precedent. Elias's reputation as the litigator of the damned title, he found both flattering and slightly morbid, continued to grow. His clients ranged from mischievous sprites facing charges of unlawful glitter distribution to disgruntled gargoyles seeking compensation for faulty wing attachments. He navigated the labyrinthian legal systems of Aevum with a blend of meticulous research, sharp wit, and an uncanny ability to unearth obscure statutes. His next case involved it between a gnome illusionist named Fizwick and a rather dim-witted ogre named Gorak. Fizwick had promised Gorak eternal happiness in a bottle. In exchange for Gorak's prized collection of shiny rocks, Gorak, upon consuming the contents of the bottle, which turned out to be highly concentrated giggleweed, felt intensely happy for approximately 10 minutes before experiencing a severe headache and realizing he had been conned. Go, ROK. In his limited legal understanding, wanted to smash Fizwick. Fizwick, citing the S-fine print written in microscopic gnomish runes, claimed full legal protection. Elias, representing Gorak, saw several glaring issues. The while technically signed, contained clauses written in a language Gorak could not possibly understand. A clear violation of the principle of mutual comprehension, outlined in the gnomish ogre trade accords of the Azure Peaks. Furthermore, the definition of eternal happiness was demonstrably misleading, failing to meet even the most lenient standards of truth in advertising, as per the Merchant Guild's charter. Elias filed a writ of specific performance with a request for monetary compensation and injunctive relief against Fizwick in the neutral arbitration zone of the Whispering Woods. The ensuing legal battle was a masterclass in contractual law. Elias meticulously dissected the exposing its deceptive clauses and Fizwick's blatant misrepresentation of his product. He even called upon an expert witness, a wizened old forest sprite fluent in both Gnomish and Ogrish, who testified to the inherent linguistic disparity between the two parties. Fizwick's defense: a flurry of illusory legal arguments and attempts to bamboozle the court with shimmering distractions proved no match for Elias's rigorous application of legal principles. In the end, the arbiter, a wise old Trint, ruled in Gorak's favor, ordering Fizwick to return the shiny rocks and pay Gorak compensatory damages in the form of several barrels of high-quality ogre ale. Elias found a peculiar satisfaction in these legal victories. It wasn't the thrill of combat or the allure of treasure, but the elegant application of logic and justice. Even in a world as chaotic as Aevum, he was a champion for the underrepresented, a voice for those who would otherwise be crushed by the powerful or the deceitful. His most bizarre case to date involved a spectral playwright named Erasmus and a coven of mischievous imps who had allegedly plagiarized his magnum opus, a silent, incorporeal pantomime titled The Existential Angst of a Lost Sock. Erasmus claimed the imps had somehow observed his spectral performance and were now staging a crudely mimicked version for their own amusement in the lower planes. The challenge lay in proving incorporeal copyright infringement. How could one demonstrate the theft of something that existed purely in the realm of spectral expression? Elias filed a petition for sensory deprivation and impartial observation with the Grand Tribunal of the Shadowfell, requesting the court to subject the imps to a controlled sensory deprivation environment. While a neutral spectral observer recorded their alleged performance, the tribunal, intrigued by the sheer absurdity of the case, granted his petition. The imps, much to their chagrin, were confined to individual sensory deprivation chambers, while a venerable ghost judge meticulously documented their frantic, silent flailing. Elias, meanwhile, presented his evidence, detailed annotations of Erasmus's original pantomime, highlighting the subtle nuances of spectral gesture and the profound metaphorical significance of the missing sock. He argued that the imps mimicked movements, while undeniably crude, bore an uncanny resemblance to Erasmus's original work. Far beyond mere coincidence, the spectral observer's testimony corroborated Elias's claims, noting several key sequences in the imp's flailing that mirrored specific movements from Erasmus's pantomime, including the poignant searching the laundry basket of despair and the climactic ode to a lonely heel. The tribunal, after much deliberation, conducted entirely through silent, telepathic pronouncements, ruled in Erasmus's favor, issuing a decree of incorporeal cease-and-desist and ordering the imps to permanently cease their unauthorized performance of the existential angst of a lost sock, much to the delight of the spectral arts. Community Elias's reputation had even reached the ears of the highest echelons of the infernal realms. One day, a crimson summons, sealed with the unmistakable sigil of a three-headed hound, arrived at his humble office, a permanently charmed extra-dimensional filing cabinet. The summons requested his presence in the grand infernal court, and the plaintiff in the case was none other than Lucifer Morningstar himself, the Prince of Darkness. The defendant, fallen angel named Azazel, accused of breach of cosmic contract and unauthorized distribution of damnation quotas. Elias, despite a healthy dose of trepidation, accepted the case. Representing a fallen angel against the devil was certainly a career highlight. If he survived it, the grand infernal court was a spectacle of fire and brimstone, filled with a motley assembly of demons, tormented souls, and various infernal dignitaries. Lucifer sat on a throne of solidified shadow, his presence radiating an aura of ancient power and sardonic amusement. Azazel, looking suitably contrite, or perhaps terrified, Lucibled before the court. Lucifer's case was surprisingly well documented. It's the original cosmic contract, dating back to the dawn of creation, clearly outlined Azazel's responsibilities in the damnation procurement department and his allocated quota of sinful souls. Lucifer presented irrefutable evidence that Azazel had not only failed to meet his quota for the past millennium, but had also been surreptitiously diverting souls to a rival upstart demonic faction in the Seventh Circle. Elias's defense of Azazel rested on a technicality, a rather significant loophole in the cosmic contract concerning acts of divine intervention and unforeseen eschatological shifts. Elias argued that the recent rise in genuinely virtuous individuals due to a surprisingly effective celestial PR campaign constituted an unforeseen eschatological shift that had significantly impacted Azazel's ability to meet his quota. He further argued that Azazel's diversion of souls was merely a pragmatic adaptation to the changing spiritual landscape, a form of market diversification rather than a deliberate breach of contract. The legal wrangling that ensued was epic, spanning eons of cosmic history and delving into the most obscure clauses of divine law. Elias cross-examined archangels, cited precedents from the war in heaven, and even presented statistical data on the fluctuating rates of sinfulness in the mortal realm. In the end, while Lucifer's claim was not entirely dismissed, the court ruled that Azazel's actions were, to a degree, justifiable, given the unforeseen circumstances. Azazel was spared eternal damnation, or at least a more severe form of it, and was instead assigned to the newly established Department of Divine Outreach and Mortal Encouragement, a punishment he arguably found far more torturous. Lucifer, surprisingly, seemed amused by Elias's legal acrobatics. "You have a certain tenacity, mortal," he remarked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Perhaps there's a place for a good litigator even in the infernal realms. Consider this an open invitation," Elias politely declined, his extra-dimensional filing cabinet feeling far more appealing than an eternity in hellish courtrooms. Despite his unusual profession, Elias found a sense of purpose in his work. He was a guardian of due process in a world often governed by brute force and magical mayhem. He ensured that even the most monstrous beings were subject to the rule of law, or at least a hilariously convoluted version thereof. His level remained low, but his reputation as the litigator of the damned continued to spread throughout Aevum and beyond. He received increasingly bizarre and complex cases, each one a unique challenge to his legal acumen. He defended a sentient slime mold, accused of unlawful territorial expansion, citing ancient fungal sovereignty laws. He represented a group of disgruntled dryads protesting the construction of a particularly garish gnome amusement park within their sacred grove, invoking the Environmental Protection Edict of the Elder Elementals. He even mediated a dispute between two rival factions of centaurs over the proper etiquette. For hosting interspecies potlucks relying heavily on the Treaty of Trivial Tribulations, one day, a notification appeared in Elias's vision. A rare occurrence for someone whose progression wasn't tied to combat or traditional skills. Unique achievement unlocked. Advocate of the absurd. Passive skill acquired. System loophole exploitation novice. Description: the user has demonstrated a remarkable ability to navigate and exploit the intricacies of the system's rules and regulations. Elias chuckled. It seemed even the system recognized his peculiar talent. Perhaps there was a kind of progression in mastering the very fabric of Aevum's legal framework as he prepared for his next case, a dispute between a banshee, a bard over alleged emotional distress caused by an overly mournful ballad. Elias felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. He might not be a powerful warrior or a mighty mage, but he was the litigator of the damned. And in a world as wonderfully weird as Aevum, that was a power all its own. He opened his extra-dimensional filing cabinet, the rustle of ancient parchments and arcane statutes, a comforting sound, and prepared to argue his next case with logic, wit, and an unwavering belief in the beautiful, baffling intricacies of the law, even if that law sometimes involved banshees, bards, and the existential angst of a lost sock.